Well, when I walked to campus today, I was thinking about art. And I thought about this horrible essay they made me read in undergrad called What is Art? By Leo Tolstoy. And besides the ridiculous assertions he makes about art being connected to morality, being connected to essentially Christianity, there was something in there that I found fascinating, and it was this, that when someone beholds a work of art, there's an exchange, and the way we consider a good work of art is that we covet that art, and we wish that we were the ones that produced that art. And I found this fascinating, and when I read Eduardo's poems, I fall victim to this, and I read them, I'm like, wow, I wish I would have written that. It's so great. In private, I call Eduardo the hummingbird wizard. And for those of you familiar with Mesoamerican cosmology, he's in the Aztec pantheon. But alas, I first experienced Eduardo's poetry last year at AWP in Chicago. He was participating in a panel on persona poems. I didn't know who he was. He read his poem, "All the trees of the field shall clap their hands," which I will not quote from because part of the magic is letting the bard recite their own poetry. I was first struck with the tenderness of Eduardo's voice, but soon I realized this gentle rubato was being juxtaposed with a weight and urgency on each word that made the poem's carnality immediate and present. Eduardo Corral's poem, or his poetry, are poemas de la carne, poems of the flesh. And by this I don't mean they are poems of a body or a wanton nature. Rather, these are poems that are tactile and textured. Eduardo's poems transcend the metaphysical and become physical. We feel them in our bellies and on our skin, but they also explore and boldly question our responsibilities as human beings to our families, our lovers, our histories, and our cultures. Eduardo Corral's book, Slow Lightning, won the Yale Series of Younger Poets in 2012. He is a recipient of a Whiting Writers Award and a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. He is a Canto Mundo Fellow and has taught at Colgate University as the Olive B. O'Connor Fellow and Bucknell University as the Philip Roth Resident in Creative Writing. He currently teaches creative writing at Columbia University. And everyone, Eduardo Corral.
Awkward moment with a writer gets a glass of water.
Thank you very much, everybody here at Sarah Lawrence. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor. Thank you, Juan, Sarah, Monique, for your words. Hummingbird wizard. That's going on a t-shirt. For sale at AWP Seattle. I'm going to start with the first poem from the collection. It's a collection that took me 9.5 years to write. I finished Iowa 01, and the book was picked up February 2011. It's an ekphrastic poem, a poem inspired by a piece of art. And this poem steals lyrics from the Prince song Little Red Corvette. Right. You'll hear them. Art completion, oil on wood, Chino Rodriguez, 1999. Before nourishment, there must be obedience. In his hands, I was a cup overflowing with thirst. Eighth ruler of my days, ninth lord of my nights, he thrashed above me like branches. Once, after weeks of rain, he sliced the potato in half to remind me of the moon. The dark slept in the small of his back, the back of his knees, pale music. We crumble the Eucharist and feed it to the pigeons. Sin vergüenza, escuincle, he who makes things sprout. In the margins, in a book of poems by Emily Dickinson, he scribbled, "She had a pocket full of horses, Trojan, and some of them used." Often I mistook him for a storyteller when he stood in the rain. A su izquierda, huesos. A su derecha, mapas de cuero. When I yawned, he plucked black petals out of my mouth. Next one's titled Watermark, and this poem steals two phrases from Gwendolyn Brooks' poem, A Boy Breaking Glass. And in this poem, I repeat the word socorro again and again. And in Spanish, when you call that word out urgently, it becomes a call for help. And it also happens to be my mother's name. You want to do that? Watermark. In the dark, only the devil can cast a shadow. Too poor to afford lilies, she walked down the aisle holding a glass of milk. Her left breast is nicknamed Juan, the right Diego. Nightly, she catches moths with newspaper cones. Hammock skipper, southern emerald, lungs black with cancer. Her father was buried 2 months before the wedding. Her name, a tassel in my mouth. Socorro, socorro. Rain pierced her womb when she was 6 months pregnant. Rain singed the face of her child, the burn marks turning into beauty marks. Beautiful flaw, terrible ornament. I keep a spur under my pillow to ward off nightmares. Too poor to afford lace, she walked down the aisle on a cold afternoon, her breath a veil. She arranges moth wings on a table, reads the wings like tarot cards, 9 of swords, knight of coins. Her mouth waters when she hears a bolero. Her father was buried in pleated pants. Day after day she folds and folds paper, alas, barros. She gave me a pack of cigarettes on my 13th birthday. Often I put on the gold ring she leaves by the sink. Not cathedrals, but presents. The first man she saw naked was the rain. The dark of her knees, a watermark. Socorro, socorro. If I dream I'm cupping her face with my hands, I wake up holding the skull of a wolf. I came of age in the late 80s, early 90s, as a gay boy in southern Arizona at the height of the AIDS epidemic. The only images I ever saw of gay men were these men kissed by death and public scorn on the TV, skeletal figures. And I tried for 9.5 years to write about those kind of emotional psychic wounds. And I couldn't, and I still can't. One day I hope to be a good enough poet to directly address that maybe. But the way I do it now is kind of with these surreal landscapes or magically real landscapes. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. At midnight, blue beetles crawling along the minute hand of the wall clock, I awakened, panicked, next to my lover, a caramel-hued cello asleep on embroidered linen. A light bulb blazes, burns out. A doe's flash a white tail that instructs the fawn to follow its mother in flight. I hurry down a hallway, through a door, into a pasture where mules are grazing. Moonlight floats in the air like coarse cloth, silver speckled and woven on the looms of mirrors. Once I tore into the torso of my cello and discovered its heart, a pair of horseshoes caked with red clay. The mules surround me, necks bent, nostrils pluming out different lengths of breath. I toss off my robe. A mule curls its tongue around my erection. I throw my head back and stare at the slowest lightning, the stars. When this book came out last March, I sent a box home to Arizona. And my nieces and nephews were excited. And my 8-year-old nephew said, "Yeah, I take it to show and tell? I'm like, no. No, we do not take it to show and tell. So I sent him a JPEG of the image. You used to take that to show and tell. I do a lot of code switching in my work. I shuttle back from English and Spanish. The Spanish is never italicized, never put in context. There's no glossary in the back of the book. I trust my readers, and I'm okay with using a reader for a line, a stanza, a poem, or even a whole section in a book. Maybe it'll come back in another poem, maybe in the next book. And also, language is one way of seeing the world, and I refuse to privilege one way of seeing over another. And this poem, the title actually functions as the first line, which I have never figured out what the proper name for that trick technique is. This is what a lot of professors in the paper I'm going to ask later on. In Colorado, my father scoured and stacked dishes in a Tex-Mex restaurant. His coworkers, unable to utter his name, renamed him Jalapeno. If I ask for a goldfish, he spits a glob of phlegm into a jar of water. The silver letters on his black belt spell Sandron. Once, borracho, at dinner, he said, Jesus was not a snowman. Arriba Durango, arriba Orizaba. Packed into a car trunk, he was smuggled into the States. Frijolero, greaser. In Tucson, he branded cattle. He slept in a stable, the horse blankets, oddly fragrant, wood smoke, lilac. He's an illegal, I'm an illegal American. Once, in a grove of saguaro at dusk, I slept next to him. I woke with his thumb in my mouth. No que no tornabas, pistolita. He learned English by listening to the radio. The first 4 words he memorized, in God we trust. The 5th, percolate. Again and again I borrow his clothes. He calls me Scarecrow. In Oregon, he picked apples, Braeburn, Jonah Goad, Cameo. Nightly, to entertain his friends, around a campfire, he strummed the guitarra, sang corridos, arriba Durango, arriba Orizaba. Packed into a car trunk, he was smuggled into the States, greaser, Wiener. Once, borracho, at breakfast, he said, the heart can only be broken once, like a window. No mames. His favorite belt buckle, an águila perched on a pal. If he laughs out loud, his hands tremble. Bugs Bunny wants to deport him. Cesar Chavez wants to deport him. When I walk through the desert, I wear his shirt. The gaze of the moon stitches the buttons of his shirt to my skin. The snake hisses. The snake is torn. Here's another plastic piece. My piece is after a piece by one of my favorite artists in the world. It's very simple. He's a conceptual artist. It was very simple on the surface. But when I saw this piece at the MoMA years ago, I broke down and cried. I looked like a New Yorker crazy, but I didn't care. I was so moved by this piece. Untitled, Perfect Lovers, 2 commercial clocks. Felix Gonzalez Torres, 1987-89. A sentence bleeding milk, to burn like the lost, darner, amber wing, skimmer, the light of the next door. After hunger, a watermark, in armor, in lilac, music in the mirrors, sleeping but falling. Nightly, the fragrant hymns, prophecies like salt, torn ram, torment, starthorn, rain in throat, to scatter the golden dirt, vague gods, small truths, to leap over the hours. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. I approach a harp abandoned in a harvested field. A deer leaps out of the brush and follows me in the rain. A scarlet snake wound in its dark antlers. My fingers curled around a shard of glass. It's like holding the hand of a child. I'll cut the harp strings for my mandolin, use the frame as a window in a chapel yet to be built. I'll scrape off its blue lacquer, melt the flakes down with a candle and ladle, and paint the inner curve of my soup bowl. The deer passes me. I lower my head, stick out my tongue to taste the honey smeared on his hind leg. In the field center, I crouch near a boulder engraved with a number and stare at a gazelle's blue ghost, the rain falling through it. When I get the phone call from Mr. Phillips, I can't call him Carl, I call him Mr. Phillips, about that he had picked the book for the contest. I went back home and had boxes and boxes of notebooks, and I went through the moment last time, and I pulled out every image, every phrase, every bit of language that still kind of appealed to me, and I stitched together a self-portrait. And it's the last poem that went into the collection. Then I boxed up the notebooks, gave them a kick, and never again shall I see them. I hope. Self-portrait with tumbling and lasso. I'm drumroll and voyeur. I am watermark and fable. I am weaving the snarls of a wolf through my hair like ribbon. At my feet, chisels and jigsaws. I am performing an autopsy on my shadow. My ribcage, a wall. My heart, a crack in a wall, a foothold. I am tumbling upward, a French acrobat. I am judder and effigy. I am pompadour and splendid. I'm spinning on spit, split in half, an apple in my mouth. I know what Eve didn't know. A serpent is a fruit eaten to the core. I'm a massacre of the dreamers, a terracotta soldier waiting for his emperor's return. When I bow, a black fish leaps from the small of my back. I catch it, I tear it apart, I fix the scales to my lips. Every word I utter is opalescent. I am skinned and orphic. I am scarlet and threshold. At my touch, a piano melts like a slab of black ice. I am steam rising, dissipating. I am a ghost undressing. I'm a cowboy riding bareback. My soul is whirling above my head like a lasso. My right hand, a pistol. My left, automatic. I am knocking on every door. I am coming on strong like a missionary. I am kicking back my legs like a mule. I'm kicking up my legs like a showgirl. My niece loves to tell me that you are nothing like a showgirl. Your poem's gonna lie after time. Caballero. This poem begins with the epigraph from Lorna de Cervantes. Only symmetry harbors lost. Throat latch, crupper, martingale, terret. My breath tightens around him like a harness. Once a year, he eats a spoonful of dirt from his father's grave. In his sleep, he mutters lines from his favorite flick, Capolina contra los vampiros. Summers, he hunts underground water with a dowsing rod made from the sun-bleached spine of a wolf. When a word stalls on his tongue, he utters suffering succotash. Stout, patchy dark, curious and quick. He builds up the bridge of his nose with clay. Mornings he sings, dices que me quieres, pero me tienes trabajando. He spits into a tin cup each time lightning strikes. In the small of his back, I bury my hands. Once, lost in the desert, he ate big panchapitayas, pissed on his fingers to keep them warm. Weekly, he plays poker with other mojados. The waiting hands teach him more English. Sawmill, 3 kings, presto. He pronounces my name beautifully. His thumb, flecha de sal, gancho de menta. In Nogales, he bought a whiskey-colored mutt. He named it Nalgas. He slipped the canary into his father's coffin, its pecking, its hunger, smoothing the creases of the face. With an oat sock and black coffee, he polishes his boots. Rosa salvaje, corazón salvaje. The innermost part of a castle is the keep. Andale pues. When I ride him at night, I call out the name of his first horse. And there's another instance of why this book cannot go to show and tell. Stop with this microphone. This book has many influences, of course, like it's the first book. But the influence, the grace on this book, and still continues to be for the next book, the next draft, the next project, is Robert Hayden. My Robert Hayden. A man whose work I am claiming in a different way as a queer poet. Robert Hayden was a man who struggled with his sexual orientation throughout his life, a struggle he shared with his wife. There was a dialogue between them. He died in 1980 believing the cancer that claimed him was punishment from the divine for his orientation. And he withheld from publication this gorgeous little homoerotic lyric called the Boneflower Elegy. He asked that it be published after his death. And near the end of that little lyric, which is a poem that in my eyes takes place in an adult theater surrounded by gay men, he invokes two characters, the angel beast and the beast angel. And those two characters always fascinated me. He just invokes them briefly. So I decided to write a poem, two poems, one for each. And I'm going to end with these two poems. And this first poem is dedicated to Arthur Russell, an avant-garde celloist, composer, disco guy from the 70s and 80s, who died of AIDS in the early 90s. If you don't know his work, you should look it up. It's quite stunning. His voice. To the angel beast. All that glitters isn't music. Once, hidden in tall grass, I tossed fistfuls of dirt into the air, doe after doe of leaping. You said it was nothing but a trick of the light. Gold curves, gold scarves. Am I not your animal? You'd wait in the orchard for hours to watch a deer break from the shadows. You said it was like lifting a cello out of its black case. To the Beast Angel begins with an epigraph from another of my favorite poets, Ronald Johnson. Unconscionable musics. To the Beast Angel. A pouring of milk among the reeds, the neck of a swan. Let me try that again. A pouring of milk among the reeds, the neck of a swan. I float on a pond, nude, obese, around my throat, on leather cord, an amulet carved from soap. Myth-haired, eyes shut, you stand on the bank, in your hands a finch. I call your name, you release the finch. It wings toward me, settles on my chest. It pecks and pecks at the moles on my skin, swallows the moles like seeds. I asked once for a father, you gave me a wreath. I asked once for a sonnet. You peeled back the skin and muscle of your left hand, 14 bones. One by one, the moles on my body disappear, leaving me immaculate, leaving me ravenous. I call your name. The finch flies back to you. You crush it. Bright blood, blue guts. I asked once for grace. You dusted my face with ash. I ask. You step into the pond, hair dissipating like smoke, eyes still shut. The reeds tick and tick. At your touch, my nipples open like bird beaks. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.